Welcome to Money on Tap. Money on Tap, your personal finance headquarters, where we bring out the professionals' experience and some fun in what we call three-dimensional investing, utilizing insurance, brokerage, and fee-based planning. That's what we do on this show. We look at all sides of the issues, and we bring a fully independent planning perspective to the table.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap. I'm Ben Brayshaw, one of your hosts here with Dan Mickelon. Glad to have you back. We have a show for you today. Excited to jump into that, but before we do, we have to pay the bills, as they say. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. But if you really want to help us, go to Instagram, go to Facebook, like us, share your thoughts, send us some emails with questions, comments, even if you have a show idea. I mean, we always want to hear what people have to say. But at Money on Tap, Dan and I and Seth, who's not with us today, we're all partners and planners here at Brayshaw Financial, and we're here to help you find success in your investing. And this is a little bit of our give back. Money on Tap, we've been doing this for, well over 8 years, huh, Dan?
Yeah, no, it's been a while. I mean, we've got a library of, it's got to be knocking on 300 shows, so a lot of good information out there. It's still available on the internet. You can grab all that in your favorite podcast provider. But yeah, it's something that I think we've touched on almost every topic at this point. So, you know, if you got any question in mind, feel free to scroll through the library of titles and pick out what's relevant. But, you know, back to your point, Ben, I mean, one of the things that I find really, truly exciting, and I'm not sure if it should be as exciting as it is to me, but when we do get questions and topics from the listeners, you know, we spend time, you know, trying to figure out, well, what's probably on people's minds these days, you know, what's relevant to discuss. But when we actually get a question, it just points us in a direction, and we know, you know, if somebody took the time to send that email and truly ask, that there's probably hundreds, maybe thousands more listeners thinking the same thing. And we want to get the information to you that is relevant for you, not so much what we just feel like talking about.
Yeah, when you think about the fact that, you know, just on the radio stations that we're on, there's like somewhere between 40 and 80,000 listeners potentially at any one point in time, podcasted on all these different venues. There's a lot of people that have these questions, and this is a little bit of how we help give back. I mean, we can't help everybody. We know that, but we really want to empower you today, and that's the point of Money on Tap. We're excited to have you here today. This is going to be a very interesting show because, you know, as we approach this end of the year, people always start questioning, like, do I like my job? What do I want next year to look like? How does that going to play into span? You know, and so for a lot of people, it's new job, new plan. And this is where it comes down to what to do with your 401k, right? I mean, that's the big question everyone has. And it's pretty shocking that 33% of all people cash out their 401k when they leave a job. I couldn't believe that study, Dan. That was absolutely shocking to me.
It's a really big number, and that can be, you know, a really big mistake. It depends on anyone's personal situation. We're going to get into the pros and cons and why that's probably happening. But I think, you know, and I can speak to experience with, you know, friends, people I grew up with who aren't in the industry, you know, they think of it as like free money on the way out. And, you know, so say, I'll just take that check. Who cares about the taxes? And that is just, that's not free money. That is hard-earned money. And you certainly don't want to be wasteful about it.
Yeah, and the government likes to take a fair share if you want to be wasteful. And I think that's going to be part of our show today. But we're going to talk about a lot of different pieces around your 401k, planning, how a new job actually leads to that. Should you leave it there? Should you take it? What should you do? And all the different pieces around that, and some very clever tax planning ideas that we think you might be able to take away, especially if, and stay tuned if, you have company stock. That really can play into an opportunity. And we're going to talk a little bit about that too. But before we dive in, we have for you Money in the News.
And first up from Yahoo Finance, this is written by Anthony DiPizio. Jensen Huang just delivered incredible news for NVIDIA stock investors. And it's just the symbol of the year. It's the company of the year. Everything in the financial news is, centered around NVIDIA. I just saw some separate article about, how what percentage of our overall GDP NVIDIA represents now as a comparison. It's one of Warren Buffett's indicators. And it's truly crazy. It's up around 11%, which is amazing for one single company. But the greatest news here, the biggest news here for investors and for NVIDIA's future outlook is that they are an absolutely dominant player in the AI and chip making space. And they are set to roll out a new chip here, which is going to be called the GB200 GPU. The shorter name for that is NVIDIA's Blackwell chip. And this is something that this is going to be the third generation in the AI space. And from the first generation to the second generation, so from the H100 to the H200, they increased their capability to process this information at 2 times, right? So from the first generation to the second, they doubled their capability with this chip. This third generation chip, the Blackwell chip that's going to be coming out, is going to be 30 times. An absolutely quantum leap in the processing world. And this is stuff that's beyond my knowledge base. I can just simply read to you what I see here. But, from the investor perspective, the article notes a meeting that between the CEO of NVIDIA and Oracle founder Larry Ellison and Elon Musk over at Tesla. And this is just kind of a social get-together. But both of these players, major heavyweights in the industry, were begging them for these chips. And literally every chip that they've planned to build is on track to be built, and it's already sold. And these are at like $30,000, $40,000 per unit. Absolutely massive expense. But that is the same expense as the prior generation chips cost. So there's, an increase in output and an increase in efficiency. And, everybody in that tech space in the AI world is absolutely clamoring to get their arms on these chips.
Yeah, this is incredible. With all the growth that NVIDIA has already seen, to think that this is just the beginning potentially of what their sales are. The fact that the older chips are still selling and people still want those, and this has that much of a quantum leap, it's pretty phenomenal. Because I think a lot of people are just wondering, where does NVIDIA's end? How do I time this market to be out of NVIDIA before I lose my shirt on all these wonderful gains? And I think the AI space, which is really NVIDIA's player, is long from over. Now, how that turns into the market, just looking at like every sector performing, whether it's bonds or gold or equities, it's literally, the market is just skyrocketing. Everyone's concerned about capital gains tax rate if Kamala becomes president. People are excited about the fact that, the Fed's going to be lowering rates again. All these things are playing in, and the market is just soaring. And as you think about the growth of what AI is delivering inside this space, I think that NVIDIA is not a tumble down the stairs kind of stock scenario that a lot of people are afraid of, to be honest with you. I think there's a lot of runway, and you think about AMD and Intel and all these other chip manufacturers that want to get into that space at the level NVIDIA is, but they are just such a dominant force, and their innovation is clearly dominant as well. It's not as if they're selling one thing. The rapid growth is just phenomenal. For those people who are thinking about the investment side, like, should I be getting out of NVIDIA? Well, you want to sell on the news, but the truth is that NVIDIA's news I don't think is quite hit just yet, and that's the interesting part of it.
Yeah, I really don't think there's a fallback contender who's even remotely positioned to take the market share from them, and I don't see the expenses slowing in any kind of way. The data center revenue represented $26.3 billion on their balance sheet this year. And that was up 154%. And all of their customers, we were talking about Alphabet and Meta, Amazon, they're already budgeted into 2025 to spend at least what they already spent. So the revenue they drive out of these data centers, which, by the way, interesting in the article that they charge by the minute, which is an incredible notion. But every chip that they plan to build is sold. All the data centers are maxing out, and the capacity is growing, and it's already budgeted into all their customers for next year. I shouldn't say all, but some of these major players here. And they're expecting that this data center infrastructure investment is going to be soon approaching $1 trillion a year industry-wide, $1 trillion. So, whenever you see a rapid rise in a stock like that, and it's the hottest story in the street for a year straight, it is good, probably mindful to get trepidatious about that, be concerned about when the rug's getting pulled out. And it could happen any day, but I just don't see it. Where are these customers going to go? There's nobody else in that space.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I'm not saying that Intel or AMD or any of the competitors out there can't come out with something that's just massively innovative that swings the bar. But to think about how they're buying that 100 chip, which is 30 times less effective than their 200 chip, just tells you that just the demand is so massive. It's just there's far room. So if someone comes up with an equal or equivalent chip, everyone just needs these chips. It's pretty incredible. And to think about what's going on with China surrounding Taiwan and all this other stuff that's happening outside of us, the chip world is getting scary, and the demand is high. So it'd be interesting to see what happens. But next up, Dan, talking about tumbling, we have an article here from the Wall Street Journal, which I found tremendously interesting, which is sad for those investors that did. But bankruptcy took down the red box machine. If only someone could take them away. Now, this article is by Becky Yerrick. I mentioned it's the Wall Street Journal, but I mean, who hasn't rented a movie from a red box? I think about Blockbuster, Redbox. I mean, I knew that was a dying scenario long term anyways, but to think about the aftermath, you still see those stupid red box machines out everywhere when you go to like the pharmacy or, gas stations. They're just sitting there. And what the article talks about is no one knows what to do with these red box machines because Redbox isn't coming to get them. They're filled with movies. There's all sorts of stuff. So anyways, in this scenario, there's companies out there that are dismantling these things. They're recycling them. They're taking the movies out. And honestly, the problem is that these Redbox machines, as you can imagine, they're bolted to the cement. They're hardwired to the companies, infrastructure, electrical, and these companies are paying. And to get rid of this Redbox machine, the companies then have to go to court to get permission to take them and get rid of them so that they're not liable for the internal assets. Now, Walgreens told the court that it spent, and I'm quoting, $184,000 a month at roughly 3,800 stores to power nearly 5,400 machines belonging to the failed business. They're spending $184,000 each month to power these machines, Dan. It is outrageous. It is outrageous. But some very interesting things going on. There's a gentleman, this guy Helton. He literally repurposed a Redbox. He got it. He ran into a guy who was getting rid of a machine somewhere and talked to him and basically got the machine. And he's basically repurposed it because it holds about 500 discs. And he literally has put all his games in it. He's made it basically this eclectic icon of keeping something from the past scenario where he stores all his games. I just think this is a very interesting scenario. But what people are doing with this defunct company and these machines is they're recycling the metals. They're getting paid a few $100 to take them. They scrap them. They get $70 for this. They sell or give away the DVDs that are inside, and they make a few bucks on it. And there's a ton of these machines out there. It's just really incredible how there's even businesses getting created around dismantling the companies and what they leave behind. But I don't know, Dan. I knew from the day I rented from a Redbox, one day these things will be gone, and they are. It's just kind of interesting. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's amazing when you think about how far Netflix came, right? They transitioned from the deliver into your house, movie by movie to this, massive streaming online platform. But Redbox just couldn't make the leap. The one thing that I thought about when I saw this article and then read it, because honest to God, I didn't realize that Redbox had gone bankrupt. I didn't know they were out of business because every time I'm leaving Hannaford's at the checkout line with my two kids, they want to go check out the Redbox machine, even though we never really rented there. But they'd like to look and see what the movies are that are available. And, it just dawned on me, well, if they've been bankrupt since, I think, early spring, they're running up there looking at the same movies every time because nobody's changing the movies in this box. So I didn't realize that, exactly what are you checking out? It couldn't have possibly changed because the box is still there.
Want to rent Gone with the Wind, Dan?
I know, over and over again, I guess, because they're all enthralled with what's available.
Unintended.
Yeah, but the other thing, it's for all these kind of store owners that get stuck with one of these things, and these are major retailers, by the way, and everyone's familiar. You see them in your Walmarts and all these big places, but just for the the benefit of being able to tear one of these things out, it's cost them over $500 per machine just to have them be taken away, which I think is, this company's bankrupt. I get it. There's really no one to fit that bill, but what a mess to leave behind. It really is. These are 900 pounds each and cost $500 to get it scrapped. So, you really stuck all these retailers with a massive expense and really just a plain old hassle.
Yeah, it's really incredible. I wasn't actually aware that they fully went bankrupt this spring either, because you still see the boxes everywhere, but they'll literally just give them to you to get rid of them. But these things weigh over 800 pounds. That's the problem. They're not like it's something easy. It's not like a plastic box. Those things are, 890 pounds for one of those red box machines. So getting rid of them, you have to get a truck. You have to get, you have to have hydraulic lifting. There's a lot of work. $500 actually sounds cheap for the capacity of weight. I don't know what a gun safe weighs, but I would presume that this is in that range at least.
My Amazon guy knows. He was struggling one up my driveway. The only time I ever had this happen, he got to the door and I was kind of watching him. He's like, giving me the side eye. He's got wiping the sweat off his brow. He's like, "What is in this?" And I was like, "Oh, it's a gun safe."
For a pistol.
He just gave me this look and turned around and left. I truly felt bad that time. And it wasn't like fireproof. This wasn't one of these 3,000 pounders, but it was apparently a little too much to order through Amazon. So lesson learned. Take a truck and get my next one that way.
That's funny. Well, next up, we have one more here for you guys. Money in the news. TD Bank hit with record $3 billion fine over drug cartel money laundering. TD Bank, what are you doing? Oh, my word. Jordan Valinsky reported on this. This is a CNN business scenario. Probably CNN was in on it too. Basically, for the last 7 years, TD Bank's anti-money laundering system has not been up to snuff, folks. And drug cartels, 6 years, since January 2018, more than 90% of the transactions went unmonitored, which enabled 3 money laundering networks to collectively transfer more than $670 million through TD Bank accounts. Dan, this is bad. And for a lot of people, they know that TD Bank, is a Canadian organization, and they basically FinCEN, which is the oversight for this, they're going to force TD Bank to move all of their anti-money laundering systems into the United States through this process. But this fine has really hampered the stock, and there's a lot of question about how the long-term, scenario will be, because they've not only said, here's your fine, but they've limited their ability to grow in the United States because of this event, which basically the stock had a 6% slump, which was pretty horrendous, and there's probably more to come.
Yeah, we're in an affiliated industry, right? So, we have lots of controls around knowing your customer and what kind of, forms of currency we can accept in a transaction. And, everything is there's just so many layers of oversight, and it's so overly reviewed. And we have to go through education on it each and every year, which is valuable and important because the tactics for these criminals change. But, to think of a major organization like that, and the Department of Justice, called them out on it and literally said, it's not just that they're transacting on behalf of criminals, they are criminal in this action. Between that statement, the fine they received, their limited growth, this was a major, major sanction that they got hit with, and well-deserved. The banking world is so similar to ours. How can you even get away with it? How can it be so pervasive that 90% of your transactions are going unchecked? It's just kind of, it's truly an amazing story that they were so loose in the regulations, and just, you can't even call that negligent. There truly has to be just some ill intent there. There's no way you can just be that sloppy and be that big of a bank. Yeah,
and I think, unfortunately, the movies don't do any justice to the damage that the cartel really does by providing, substances that, like fentanyl and so forth, that just kill brothers, sisters, children, parents, spouses. And we by no means would ever encourage anybody to do drugs, but some of these people are doing drugs not with the expectation that they're going to be taking some of these lethal substances. And so there is nothing nice about these people. The fact that TD Bank didn't do this is a massive disservice to our American people here and all the people that they service. So it's a sad day, but it's something to be, it's money in the news. It's something to be relevant and understand that, there's just things that people don't do. They cut corners to save money, to make money, and so forth. But that stock has taken a hammer from mid 60s all the way down into the 50s. So, and I think, I wouldn't be surprised if there's more to come. So that's a scary thing. Just the limitations Wells Fargo is dealing with that the article mentions from a similar fine in the past has still held them back from growing as the bank that they want to be.
And the Wells Fargo thing, just important to note, the Wells Fargo thing was not drug money related. So just separate those two. Different problem.
Fair enough.
Different problem.
Fair enough. Yeah. Well, that's going to do it for us for Money in the News. You're listening to Money on Tap. We're going to be right back. We've got new job, new plan, what to do with your 401k. As we approach this new year, we know that people are looking to find new locations for employment and so forth, and decisions need to be made. We've got some really great stuff coming for you, specifically some tax-saving opportunity for you if you own company stock and you're thinking about leaving. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Hey guys, Seth Krussman with Brayshaw Financial Group. Are you ready to take control of your financial future? Look no further than Brayshaw Financial Group. Our team of experienced advisors is dedicated to helping beginners like you build wealth through smart investing strategies. Visit BrayshawFinancial.com today and start your journey towards financial independence. Brayshaw Financial Group, your partner in wealth creation.
We appreciate you listening to Money on Tap. You can contact us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. And now, more of this week's program.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. And you're going to want to reach out to us because new job means new plan, what to do with your 401k. That's our show today. This is the crux of a lot of conversation for people. As we approach this, end of this year, people are probably considering jobs. People are looking at jobs. People have lost jobs. I know the IT industry has been hit pretty hard in different areas. And a lot of people say, I've got this 401k. I've only been here a couple of years. There's a few $1,000s in it. Well, did you know that 33% of people, when they leave their job, cash out their 401k, meaning they pay taxes and penalties when they leave? Did you know that 40% of younger people with accounts under $25,000 cash out their 401k? And I think what's really the point of our show and the reason we're talking today is because, you might have 20 jobs over a lifetime, and continuing to dismantle any retirement hopes you have and giving large sums of money, paying 10% penalties, paying income tax on your retirement plan by cashing out is doing yourself a long-term disservice. As Benjamin Franklin once said, that compound interest was the most powerful force in the universe. And that's not a direct exact quote, but it's pretty darn close. And I think what people don't understand is you might not be working at a job for 20 or 30 years and built up this massive 401k, but you can bring these things together under one umbrella. You can make these things come into a single investment strategy that can really amplify your retirement. And so many people just ignore it and see it as, hey, this is free money. I can just use this to get myself from point A to point B or pay off a credit card or do something. And these types of things are really not healthy long-term financial investments. And so we want to work with you today to educate you in a space of what to do with your 401k when you leave your job and how to do that. And if you have questions beyond this show, we want to encourage you to reach out to us and give us a call at that 855-226-8551 because we want to see you be successful in your investing.
Yeah, this, it is a mistake that I've seen, lots of people that I know and care about make. And and the reasons behind it, whenever I hear that this has happened, and, I've had people tell me, well, I had a 2-week notice and I was going to take an extra couple of weeks, so I just figured I'd use the 401k money for a little vacation or, something like that. And, they say, well, my prior company matched, my new company will match. I'll be making more money as I move into the new job. So I figured I'd just take this, put it in my pocket, and just, there's certainly circumstances where that might be a necessary decision for some people. So this isn't a broad brush kind of comment, but, regardless of the intentions, the bottom line is this: if you're under age 59 and a half when you're making this job change, which many people are, you're looking at a 10% penalty right off the top. So 10% of whatever the 401k was worth is gone. And then on top of that, you're going to add that into your income, and you're moving into, hopefully, generally speaking, a higher income opportunity, right? That's why you're changing your job, probably to go make more money. And whatever was in that 401k, you just pushed it into your income. So you're affecting your tax rate on that new job as well. So to take that kind of a hit, it really just doesn't make sense unless there's some really truly driving factor. And, there's an example of someone making $85,000 who lives in a state that between federal, state, and local taxes pays roughly 30%. So for people listening to this in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, there's a reasonable number there with a $15,000 401k. So it's not big enough to be, of substantial concern necessarily for this earner, but it's not nothing either. It's $15,000. That's a reasonable amount. If this example that was given here, if that employee quits, cashes it out, puts the money in their pocket, they will have left behind $6,000 in taxes and penalties. So their $15,000 became $9,000, and they put it in their pocket and moved on with that. But when you think about that, $6,000 out of $15,000 left behind in penalties. That's really just an unnecessary expense. There's got to be a better way to accomplish whatever was intended there.
Yeah, and I think that's that brings us to the question of what do you do? A lot of people and there may be if feeding your family is the question, maybe that's the only choice on the table, and that's fine. But do you keep your 401k, Dan, where it's at? It's got $5,000, $10,000, $50,000, $150,000, or do you move it to an IRA? And a lot of people have this conversation and roll over your 401k to your IRA, and this is probably the best illustration I've ever really been able to example for people. 401k is like driving a 70 passenger bus, a big school bus, or a Greyhound. But an IRA can be as streamlined as a sports car, and based on its performance, it might be a Maserati, and it might be a Nova. At the end of the day, where you're invested and how you can do it, you can be significantly more agile in how you invest when you get to an IRA. But then you have to really compare fees. And I think that's really what people are starting to talk about. And it's a big movement in, our industry, which is Reg BI, which is regulation best interest. And you start saying those words to anybody in the financial industry, and they're like, oh, they roll their eyes, because it's a lot of work on our end. We have to do due diligence around, are you buying the same fund or fund equivalent in an IRA as if you're, buying in the 401k, and are you paying a higher rate for that type of thing? And so there's a lot of work inside this, and there may be points in time where your 401k might be the best place to leave it. But there are many, many times where moving it to an IRA makes a lot of sense. And one of them is for a lot of people who work lots of different jobs over their lifetime and trying to bring that asset together to magnify it to be more intentional. But with the option of cashing out, that should never be your first choice. That should never be the first direction you take. That is the absolute last decision you want to make, just based, Dan, based on that whole conversation and so forth. But you also could potentially, with a new employer, roll your 401k to their 401k. And so, as you're kind of going through the different options, what you really want to do is you want to figure out, and this is a lot of work, right? You got to figure out, hey, is my old 401k cheaper than my new 401k, or is it better to go to an IRA? Is my account going to be big enough in an IRA to invest the way I want to invest? There's a lot of questions inside these options, and I think we want to go through these in a little bit more detail.
Yeah, the idea of going plan to plan with it is something that can certainly make sense. First off, you pay no taxes, right? So if you're going from 401k to 401k, in that transaction, you pay no taxes whatsoever. Now, the next level of consideration is, you brought up, rightfully so, fees. How expensive is this, asset allocation option that they're going to have? are the funds similar? Is the fund offering in a 401k, is it a wider spectrum of options? Now, each plan, each company, sets their own standard as to what's available. There are some, IRS guidelines, government instituted that, suggest that there has to be diversity of offering, right? So that there do have to be, a series of choices. And most plans we run into, have reasonable choices, but they don't necessarily match up. It's not the same holdings. It's not the same funds. So there will be some work to be done there as well. And then the considerations of, really what are the benefits if you were to consider going into an IRA? What are the benefits, the differences between an IRA plan and a 401k plan? And I think one of the most important is the ability to take a loan. The loan option is something that I think is very, very important. But, really the considerations come down to this, and we just kind of hit on the first point, cash it out, which, Ben and I think agree that that's not the option you want to take unless there's some family hardship involved that you just have no choice. You can take that money, you can roll it to an IRA, which will broaden up the horizons in terms of investment potential. It'll give you the opportunity to do something like a Roth conversion. So there are some interesting options there in the IRA space that we can dive into a little bit further. Then there's the 401k to 401k transfer, which I just hit on. There's some considerations there, whether or not the funds match up. You have to make some, to sell the old plan to buy the new plan kind of a thing. And does the new plan offer the choices you used to and would prefer to see? And so those are the things you really do need to consider. And we talked about the strategy involving if you actually hold company stock inside of your 401k. Now, that's something that needs to be very, very commonplace. In fact, 401ks were often for a period all company stock, or the vast majority of it, but you don't run into that quite so much. But if you do have company stock in your 401k, there is a unique opportunity there. It's something a little bit different than most other considerations, but there's some real potential tax savings there. It's something to really consider if you find yourself in that position.
Yeah, and I think this tax opportunity exists for a lot of people who have had the ability to participate in owning company stock. And there's more detail to it, but this NUA process allows you to choose to roll your stock to an IRA from your 401k, or you can actually choose to move it to an after-tax brokerage account and actually only pay taxes on the portion that was invested in the stock. Meanwhile, the gain in the stock is tax deferred and then would be taxed as capital gains instead of ordinary income that would come out of your retirement plan. And I know this is a little bit of a complicated subject, and so I would encourage you to reach out to us and give us a call. We're going to be right back. You can reach us at 855-226-8551. Email us, info@yourmoneyontap.com, or find us on Instagram, Facebook. Reach out. Let us know. Throw some stars up there. Appreciate it. Tell us how much you love Dan. Tell us how much you love me or Seth, or wish Seth was back. But we're working on this. We're gonna be right back. New job, new plan. What to do with your 401k. We have a lot coming here, so don't go anywhere.
Hey everyone, Dan Mickelon here with Brayshaw Financial. Looking for a hassle-free way to invest? Look no further than Brayshaw Financial Group. With Brayshaw Financial Group, you can start investing with as little as $100, enjoy a user-friendly platform with a diverse range of investment options. Visit Brayshaw Financial Group and start your investment journey today. Brayshaw Financial Group, investing made easy.
You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. Thanks for staying with us today. What to do with your 401k when you're looking at that new job, that new opportunity? You got this old money just hanging around. What do you do? Dan, you're up.
Yeah. So, the benefits of 401k, and there's a good handful of them, are something to really consider. And, if you do choose to roll that money over to an IRA and kind of exit the 401k space, it can take a while before you kind of build back up these privileges in the new 401k. And the first thing to consider, I mean, we hit on it, of course, is the cost structure. 401ks typically, because particularly if you worked at a really large company, can have some discounts and some advantages in terms of cost on your investments over the IRA space. There are certainly low-cost IRA options, but just saying in general, a 401k may be cheaper than an IRA option. The next thing, though, that I think is of primary importance, and this is a feature that I've leveraged before, and I think a lot of 401k holders have, is the loan provision. Okay, in the IRA world, there is no such thing, so you don't have that ability. There are certain ways to get money out short term, but if you haven't returned it within 60 days, you've created a tax event. Whereas in a 401k, you can take that loan out up to 50% of your vested value, or $50,000 as a maximum. Those are the IRS guidelines. But you can pay it back over time. You can pay it out or pay it back with interest to yourself out of each and every pay cycle going forward. Okay, and that's one thing to consider too on the exit side. So if you're leaving your job and you have a loan outstanding, you're going to have to settle that up in near term. Generally speaking, you have to pay it off right away, or sometimes you get a 6-month extension from the IRS to work that out. But anything that does not get paid back immediately becomes taxable to you. So when you are leaving a job, one thing to consider before you go is the state of your 401k and whether or not you have a loan outstanding on it. But that privilege, though, in the 401k space in general, I think is an absolutely fantastic feature. And, it's generally I would say I prefer the IRA, but that's the one item in the 401k space that I do really like. And I've taken advantage of it myself. I've got my side of my house on a 401k loan. So, it's something that can be really handy at the right times. But other things to consider is there are some earlier distribution options. In a 401k, you can start making withdrawals at age 55 under certain conditions. So in the IRA space, that's 59 and a half, other than some early bailout provisions we'll get into. But, to get access to that money at age 55 versus 59 and a half can be a significant part of a retirement plan for some people. It's a big deal. So that's something to consider as well. And there's additional creditor protections. If you do find yourself, in debt with some obligations or sued for some reason, money inside of the 401k has layers of protection that are a degree better than what's in the IRA space. Although IRA is generally protected, 401ks offer a higher degree of protection from any kind of creditor claim that you may encounter.
Those are all really great points. And I think, when it comes to understanding the value of a 401k versus IRA, it's really hard for a lot of people to quantify these very intricate things. But if you are having a troubled season in your life, have massive creditors, bankruptcy court, traditionally 401ks aren't even touched in this space. So there's a lot of, there's a lot of opportunity around that. When it comes to your IRA, there is a lot of positives to an IRA. There's lots of different types of IRAs, right? So you have Roth IRAs, you have traditional IRAs, you have simple IRAs. There's a ton of different SEP IRAs, and we can go on and on. There's a lot of different retirement plans out there. For the most part, other than the Roth IRA, everything is a after-tax contribution that becomes a tax deduction. And at the end of the day, the money is treated as if it wasn't taxed because you got a tax credit, a tax deduction on your tax return. Therefore, it's equivalent to pre-tax money. The nice thing about a 401k is that you don't have to worry about having to come up with the money with after tax because they take it out before you even get paid. And so that makes it easier to fund a 401k, which is really nice. But with an IRA, like I had mentioned before, bus versus sports car, an IRA, you can literally try to find whoever houses the type of investment strategy you want to be the custodian of your IRA. So maybe you want to be in CDs at the bank or a money market IRA, or you want to own straight up stocks or mutual funds or ETFs. You can go to whichever investment option you feel is best suited for you and choose that for you. I think that's one of the things that a lot of people don't actually talk about is, the limitations that the 401k has, and saying this as their kind of oversight fiduciary, looking at that bus of people who are driving on that 401k bus. These are all the funds we're going to make available to those people, so we keep them within the guardrails as best we possibly can. But when you say, hey, listen, those guardrails were really too rigid, or they didn't include certain investment classes that are more conservative that I want, you have the ability to go and find those inside an IRA and give you that direct access to that. The other thing about IRAs is that, you can actually get into annuities, and that's very interesting because you may be looking for lifetime income or a death benefit or some sort of, income protection, value protection strategy that's going to fit into your long-term planning that doesn't exist inside the 401k space, which is interesting. With an IRA, there's also some early distribution opportunities. You could do what they call a 72 T or Q with any of your qualified or non-qualified funds that might be either an annuity or an IRA to get early retirement for yourself in that as well. And like Dan had mentioned, there are some creditor protections with IRAs, but yes, they are a step below the 401k space. And I think that's the big issue because a lot of people, and just from a very transparent, scenario, you go to a financial professional and they don't want you to keep the 401k because the IRA is the only way they can invest the money. And that's very, very true because the 401k is managed by some other firm or organization and so forth. And I totally get that. And I got to be honest with you, there's very few times that leaving your money after you leave the job does even really make sense. It's just leaving it at the 401k. It's usually unmanaged, unkept, and it's just sitting out there in the wind. And people forget about those assets. And in an estate issue, someone's got to go figure out how to get that money out. And Dan, we have met people with like 5, 6, 8, 10 different little 401ks, $100 here, $1,000 there, $3,000 there. There's so many little pieces, and trying to invest those in a healthy manner, the limitations of finding a really good planning strategy, a diversified portfolio, you're hampered so much by the chaos that's going on inside having all these 401ks that bringing them together in an IRA has a suitability claim in its own right. But that being said, there are times where people say, I have a lot of money in my 401k. The cost of these funds that I'm invested with that I absolutely am going to stay with no matter where I go would cost me more on the street in an IRA. And I think that's really where the big question mark comes is fees. What's it going to cost you to own what you own, and what's going to be the cheapest option?
Yeah, and inside of the IRA world, there are some other circumstances where you can get access to funds before age 59 and a half, but you have to qualify for them. There's a hardship withdrawal, which is not an easy definition to meet. There's exemptions for qualified educational expenses like college tuition. $5,000 for a birth or an adoption. There's a limit you can withdraw without facing that penalty. If you have medical expenses that health insurance isn't covering, or if you're unemployed, there's a potential exemption there as well, although, again, not easy to qualify for. And up to $10,000 for a first-time home buyer. So in the IRA world, you have these kind of outs where you can get access to funds that kind of offset that loan provision inside of the 401k, which doesn't really come with a definition. You can loan the money for any cause, any reason you'd like. But, it is just a different option when it comes to creating liquidity and getting access to those funds. Another major difference is the contribution limits themselves. We've been really focused in on, the rollover effect, right? Taking an account that already exists that was funded as a 401k and then potentially moving it into something else. That's not a situation where contribution limits come into play at all. So contribution limits come into play when you are, having that account outside of the 401k structure and choosing to continually fund it yourself. In the 401k world, just to draw that contrast, whether it's traditional 401k or Roth 401k, and if you're lucky enough to be at a company that offers that, which is becoming more and more commonplace. But the contribution limits for 2025 are going to be $23,500 that you yourself can contribute, not inclusive of whatever the company might match if they offer a match. And that's obviously another benefit to the 401k space is some companies will match up to 2, 3, 4% of your salary into that, which is absolutely free money. So we encourage everybody who participates to contribute at least up to the match. But to contrast that against the IRA limits for contributions for either Roth or traditional or the sum total of the two, if you're contributing to both, it's only $7,000 in 2025. So it's a significantly different opportunity for those new accounts, separate from the rollover amounts.
Yeah, there's a lot of changes between the last few years, tax-wise and contribution-wise, and I think, kind of understanding those things, that's where, a financial planner can really step in. Because, Dan, it's not just these individual contribution changes. It's like, are you even in the right plan? Are you even paying the right tax bracket to be looking at an IRA versus a Roth IRA and evaluating those things and getting some real advice inside that? We're going to be right back talking a little bit more about the strategy of this space and what to do next as you kind of figure out what directions you should take, because that's really what it is about finding the success in your investing. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. Go to Instagram, go to Facebook. Subscribe, like us, please. That helps us out a huge amount. We're going to be right back. We're going to close this show out with some really clever how-to-do-it-yourself kind of movement pieces that will help you from here to through the entire period of your life in retirement. Don't go anywhere. Are you looking for personalized guidance to kickstart your investing journey? Look no further. Brayshaw Financial Group and our planners are here to help. Our team of experts will provide personalized advice tailored to your financial goals. Visit BrayshawFinancial.com today to schedule your free consultation. Brayshaw Financial, investing made easy.
You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551. Boy, we have gone through the 401k IRA space. We're trying to help you understand. Don't liquidate your 401k when you leave your job. Let's find a place. Let's find some structure. Let's find some opportunity for you to really build out your retirement, because as you're moving from space to space, job to job, place to place, bringing this stuff together and empowering yourself financially is really the right call. And, this is one thing I really love about Dan is he spends a lot of time trying to help people really bring a lot of these pieces together too. And we have talked to people who are like, boy, you're moving over a $500 401k, and it takes a lot of time and effort. And we'll probably never make the money back on the amount of time we spend doing it. But the service, by consolidating and bringing all these little pieces, because we meet people with massive amounts of 401ks. And, today I want to close this show out, Dan, and talk a little bit about some of the opportunities that exist outside the 401k that you might not have at your job. Right now, taxes are actually quite low. And I say that, and probably half the listeners are saying, what are you talking about? But if you go back 40, 50, 60 years and you look at the historical tax rates, you'd be shocked to know that back in the 1950s, we were in a 92 to 94% tax bracket at the top rate, where today we're at 37%. Somebody who's in a 22% bracket today would probably be in a 50% bracket back then. And I think with our national debt and all the things going on, the tax brackets you're going to be in, fast forwarding 20, 30, 40 years, are going to be significantly more painful than they are today. And your 401k may not offer the opportunity to do a Roth. And we've done a number of Roth shows, but Roth money is after-tax money that grows tax-free and comes out tax-free. And, one of the opportunities inside moving your 401k is the ability to move it or a portion of it directly into a Roth and to quantify a taxable event. So you would pay taxes out of pocket, but to be able to start building a tax-free asset for yourself to prepare yourself for retirement and kind of lock in that tax that you're going to pay on those dollars at today's rate. And for some people who leave a job, you might have the next 3 months where you don't have income, and you might be in a lower income tax bracket, which will allow you to do that. We also encourage people that maybe you can't convert all of it, but we move a portion of it into a Roth and we move the rest of it into an IRA. So we tax defer all that money from your 401k to your IRA, and then we selectively choose specific amounts of money to move into the Roth. What really that empowers you to do is to really dial in, turn the volume up or down on the tax level that you're willing and able to consume inside doing that conversion. And that's super, super important and something that's, empowering for you long term.
Yeah, one of the consideration in the Roth space, and I know we're in agreement that having assets in Roth accounts is just really a wonderful benefit. And for people who do versus people that don't, it just gives you just a great opportunity to kind of play the tax code in retirement, to choose where you withdraw income from, dependent upon what the current tax conditions are, administration to administration. So to have that option is a really incredible benefit. But in the 401k versus IRA story that we're kind of focused in on, if your company offers a 401k Roth option, your income does not come into play. You can earn as much as you'd like, and if the plan offers it, you can still contribute $23,500 to that in 2025. In the IRA space, making those contributions outside of the 401k environment, outside of the employer environment, there's number one, an income limit. So if you are married filing jointly making in excess of $246,000, you are not eligible to make any Roth contributions whatsoever. And even if you are eligible, the most you can make is a $7,000 annual contribution. So we believe very, very much in Roth allocations and in Roth money. Pay the taxes now, as Ben just mentioned about the current state of tax brackets versus what the historical looks like and projecting into the future what it may look like. Paying those taxes today makes a lot of sense. And having that Roth account later, when it is time to take distributions from retirement accounts, is an absolutely invaluable tool. We just really encourage people to do that. One of the other differences we didn't hit on that's worth a mention here, though, when you're considering 401k versus IRA, is the beneficiary aspect to it. What should happen, should you unexpectedly pass and haven't had time to properly prepare an estate plan? In a 401k, if you're holding it on your demise, they're going to pay that out to your beneficiaries in a lump sum. And there is nothing that them as the recipients will be able to do to avoid that taxation. They're going to get hit with those taxes. Whereas in an IRA, you can take that income, a beneficiary can take that income out over a 10-year period and spread out those taxes. They can take it all at once if they like, take the tax hit, but from the longest period perspective, the best they can stretch it out, they would have 10 years to spread out that income, which, again, is really an invaluable tool and a way to be efficient inside of your taxes.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things. Like a lot of people don't understand, and or even you may understand, but the complexity of really, swerving these, in this car analogy, swerving through these, tax hits and how to mitigate this stuff so that you or your family or the expectation of what you're going to get to keep of this money is not, adversely sideswiped or, crashed into on the side and you feel like, you really had a major accident, because that's how people feel. It's like I planned, I saved, I did everything I possibly could, and then I just had a 401k accident. How did that happen to me? And I think that's the piece that we're really trying to help you understand, that there's so much to this space that we can't possibly encompass it in one show. But just the idea that you can take your company stock and move it to a brokerage account and transition that money out of, ordinary income tax in the future to a capital gains tax, if that so be the direction you want to go tax-wise, and then defer the gain you've experienced already in that stock, that's a huge opportunity in the right circumstances. Now, I get concerned when I hear, Kamala Harris talking about a 44% capital gains tax. That stuff makes me nervous in that kind of transition. So you have to really understand the politics around how this is going to impact you too, because that may not be the direction you want to go. And it's something to really consider. As we close out this show today, Dan, do you have any last thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing I can stress is understand your options, learn about the new plan. As you're sitting down in an interview before you accept that position, ask questions about matching, about Roth options, understand what investment selections exist. It's not more important than the job change that you're about to make, but it is significantly important, and it's a benefit. So you really need to get schooled on it and understand what's out there.
That's great. So true, Dan. So true. That's why I love working with you. You've been listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. You have questions about what to do with your 401k, you please give us a call. Be happy to talk to you. Happy to try to work through anything that you need. We're going to be back next week. You make it successful. Have a great day.
The views expressed are not necessarily the opinion of this radio station and should not be construed directly or indirectly as an offer to buy or sell any securities mentioned herein. Investing is subject to risks, including loss of principal invested. No strategy, product, material, or tool mentioned can assure a profit nor protect against loss. Please note that individual situations can vary. Therefore, the information, products, materials, or tools mentioned should be relied upon when coordinated with individual professional advice. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. This show may be subsidized in whole or in part by a product sponsor or issuer. Securities and advisory services offered through Osaic Wealth Incorporated, member FINRA SIPC, and a registered investment advisor. All other services offered through Brayshaw Financial Group LLC are independent of Osaic Wealth Incorporated. Osaic Wealth Incorporated and Brayshaw Financial Group do not provide tax or legal advice. Main office is located at 116 South River Road, Bedford, New Hampshire 03110, and can be reached at toll-free 855-226-8551.